Hey guys, we are in the basement and today we're gonna do part number 3 of our Time Pilot Restore. This is gonna be a long video, so buckle up. We're gonna cover a bunch of stuff actually, some pretty cool stuff. We are going to install the high score save kit on the PCB, which is gonna be a fun little exercise in EEPROM burning, installing a socket for an NVRAM chip, removing a RAM chip, burning ROMs, putting them on, and then testing it all out to see if the thing works and it actually saves high scores. And then also, we're gonna do a lot of the metal work today, sanding and painting. We're gonna put together the control panel and clean it up and the buttons. We're gonna be doing a lot of work today. So anyway, before we do anything else, why don't we go out to the garage and let's get started on the Time Pilot Restore part number 3. Okay guys, here is the Time Pilot currently, and I've done a little bit of work since the last video. Actually, I sent out the marquee to Rich at thisoldgame.com. Rich sent me a message and he said, hey, send me your marquee. I want to use it for color matching and I'll send you back a reproduction for free. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. And then also I have a lead on a new old stock one. So I might end up with 2 marquees. The new old stock could be a reproduction. I'm not sure. I've heard some bad things about some of the reproductions that were done to the marquees a long time ago. And if you guys saw in my last video, the marquee was completely shot. I mean, it was just like toast. It looked fine, but then when you lit it up, there was a gazillion little holes in it, little spidering and stuff. It was just a complete train wreck. So it's really the only part on here that I absolutely have to replace because it was just disastrous. Also today, I did this off camera. I got all this double-sided tape off of here. This was holding down the cardboard bezel, and I just took some Goo Gone, and the stuff just fell off. So Goo Gone is really great for adhesive type stuff. So definitely recommend that. I just soaked a little bit on here, and bam, it just fell right off. So I think what I want to do first here is, I think it's funny because since I've had the game now for a couple weeks. I'm really, certain things are starting to bug me. Things that I thought I could let go, I'm thinking I can't let go now. Like the control panel is actually starting to bother me because I can feel the rust underneath it. And I have a feeling that it's just like how my Gyrus was. Because the Gyrus control panel, underneath the CPO, the control panel overlay, was pure rust, and this thing just fell off. And I suspect I've got the same deal going on underneath here. It looks fine though. I probably could leave it. I think what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to let it be. And if I can find a suitable replacement, I'm going to replace it because no one has done a good quality silkscreen control panel overlay. I have a friend though that is going to be sending me a digitally printed one, so I'm anxious to see how it looks. But for now, we're going to keep it original. So I think what I want to do right now is I want to put this back together. I want to put the joysticks and the buttons back on. And in the last video, we soaked our buttons right here. And these have been actually soaking. These are the original buttons. They have been soaking in this solution that I made, which is bleach, simple green, and like dish soap and water. And I've had it soaking here for almost a week. And so we're going to pull these buttons out and wipe them down, and then we're going to put everything back on the control panel, the joystick, and the wiring and all that. And so why don't I set up the tripod, and why don't we get to work on that? Okay, you know, I started getting all the parts out to put the thing back together, the joystick and all that, back on the control panel, and I pulled these nuts out. The carriage bolts here, these are what holds all the hinges. These hold the joystick onto the control panel, and they're just all rusted, and I cannot put those back on. So instead of replacing them, I'm going to restore them, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to sand them down with some sandpaper and then hit them with some spray paint. And I do this all the time on all my restores because a lot of times the nuts, the carriage bolts are really oddball and they're hard to replace. You can go to Ace Hardware and get lucky sometimes, but it's a lot of times it's very hard to find that specific carriage bolt. I mean, it's a very special size there, and and the head will be a different shape or something. You might find something close, but so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just take some sandpaper and I'll sand the heads down and just get all the rust off of them like so. And like I said, I do this all the time. And it really makes a big difference. It's very easy to do. So look, we're just sanding this down. And these are all, these are all little carriage bolts that you can see, and you don't want all that rust showing. So we're just going to sand them down. And okay, we have our little carriage bolts sanded. I sanded all the rust off all the heads. And then what I do after that is I always do it this way. I take a 12-pack soda box like this. So I punch a whole bunch of holes in it with a screwdriver. And then I take my little carriage bolts and I just stick them in the holes. And this makes a nice little holder that we can use when we're going to paint, when we paint the heads, which we're going to do right now. So... and this is just an easy, down and dirty way to restore these. Now these were originally black, so this is totally appropriate what we're doing. Sometimes they'll have like a gun blue finish, and I'm actually going to start doing that. I'm going to buy some of that bluing ink that they use for guns and to stain the metal to make it like a blue color. I think I'm going to start doing that instead of the paint here, but for now, we're going to do it this way, and this is actually, again, appropriate because these were black. So they were like some kind of a black painted carriage bolt or something. So, all right, we got all of our screws here, and I'm going to go ahead here and put this on the ground, and let's hit them with some paint. Okay, we've got our screws on the ground in the box. I put some cardboard behind it, and I'm going to hit it with a semi-gloss black, which is pretty close to the original finish that was on there. Not too shiny, not too satiny, just kind of in between there. So let's just go ahead and hit this stuff. And I'll probably do a few coats. But, I mean, this is going to make a huge difference on our control panel. Instead of looking at rusted, bolt heads, we'll have nice semi-gloss black ones. So I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll come back later. I'll hit it with another coat, and then we'll be ready to install those. So, okay, let's go over here, and I've got the buttons all cleaned up. And what I did is I took my solution, my glass that had the buttons and the bleach and all that, and I brought it inside, and I just rinsed it out in like a strainer. And again, these buttons cost $1 to replace, but I don't have any on hand right now, and I'm not placing an order. I'm not just going to place an order for $3 in buttons and pay $5 in shipping. So next time I place an order online, I'll get new buttons. But for now, we're just going to restore the old ones. And I took them all apart, and we totally cleaned them up, and they look a lot better than they did. And actually, these old buttons have a really nice feel to them. There's something about the curvature of the roundness of all the angles. There's no hard edges here. They just have a nice, pleasant feel. So let's go ahead and put them back together. It's pretty easy, really. So basically, we have to take our spring right here and put it on there like so. And then put this piece in there. And then we're going to take our C-clip or E-clip right here and just put it back on. And that's really all there is to it. I could probably snap it on with my hand. And just like that. So you can see the buttons, though. They're showing their age. And I probably will replace them. But for now, this is going to make them nice and presentable. And it didn't cost us any money. And so far on this restoration, I have spent $0. Right? Let's see. Have I bought anything? No, I haven't bought a damn thing. So, this is a down and dirty install. I'm going to buy a marquee, though, and that's going to be about $50. Which, $60. Which is a lot compared to what's invested over here next to me. Okay. All right, they look good. So why don't we go ahead and get the control panel over here. We can't install the joystick yet until the screws dry, but we can start putting the buttons in. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me grab the control panel. And again, I decided to kind of leave the control panel the way it is, because I think that if I do get a new overlay, then I will do the full restoration on here. For now, we're going to leave it all original because it looks pretty good, and I don't have a replacement control panel overlay. So I don't really have a choice here. We're going to have to stick with this original one. But it does look good. You know, the corners here, not so hot, but I think at the end of the day, though, it's going to look pretty sharp when we get done here. Okay, so these buttons need to go on here a very specific way. I don't know why Sentry did this, but they did like this weird red-white mix-up thing. So we have our diagram, and I actually labeled which buttons went where, which colors, and I did it from this side here. And so I have the front and the hinge side. So white goes right here. And we'll just kind of put that through. And these buttons have a little, if you could see that, there's a little notch right there. And you need to get that notch lined up with the notch on the control panel. So you can see the control panel also has a little notch, a little cutout right there. So you want to get the buttons notch lined up with the notch on the metal control panel. And right there, and it's like on the part line when they molded it. And okay, so we've got our buttons in, and we're just gonna put it down, hope they stay in place. Okay, so now we need to get our leaf switch housings, and we need to look at our diagram that we made here because we want to put everything in the right spot. And if you can see here, we have gray. The gray wired button needs to go here, and then the white one goes down there. So we're going to take our harness here and just kind of try to make sense of this. And so this stuff over here is for the joystick. Okay, so this is gray. So the gray goes there, and the purple goes here, and the white goes here. And again, I'm looking at my diagram that I made. That way there's no confusion. It goes like that. And when we do this, we gotta kind of make sure that everything's gonna kind of sit in the right spot after we tighten it down. Okay, so let's get our button nuts. You know, I've been putting this video off today because it's hot as all hell out here. I mean, I'm doing this at night. I thought it would be a little bit cooler because during the day it was so humid out here, and still very humid. I'm dripping sweat all over this as I'm doing it. So, but I felt the pressure today on Saturday here to do this because got to get the video out on Sunday. I've created this problem for myself. It's a good problem. All right, so I enjoy doing it, and it actually gets me off my ass and gets me out here. All right, so we're just putting these nuts on here, on the buttons, and you know the buttons are threaded, and then we have these giant kind of punched nuts that screw onto them. And you can usually get away with just hand tightening these. Okay, so the buttons are in, and we're all ready for the joystick. Once the nuts are dry, the carriage bolts are dry, then we can screw the joystick back into the control panel. So I'm just going to snug these up a little bit, just a hair. You don't want to overdo it because you're tightening down on a plastic thread, and be very easy to break these. So I'm just gonna do like, you know, an eighth of a turn here with the pliers just to snug it up. Okay, so let's look from the front and check out how our new buttons look. And well, they're cleaned up. They're the original buttons, but we cleaned them up. And I'd say they look pretty damn good there. Let's take a closer look. That's not bad for all original, huh? You know, those buttons are 30 years old. Can you believe that? So they cleaned up pretty nice, and they have a nice feel to them. So, okay, so why don't we wait for the paint to dry, and let's put the joystick on the control panel. All right, guys, here it is the next day, and our carriage bolts have dried, and they look nice and clean and restored. So now we're ready to put the joystick on the control panel. And again, just reverse of how we took it off. We're just gonna turn this over. On this particular control panel, you do not have to remove the ball. On a lot of joysticks, you do. On a lot of other games, you do, where the ball will not fit through the hole in the control panel. With this game, that's not the case. It goes right through like so. So, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead here and screw this down. Let's get some of our nice, clean, shiny screws here. And we've got a few different sizes, so I wanna get 4 of the short guys. The longer ones are used like for the ground wire and to hold the control panel down. And then the other ones are used to hold the hinge down and all that stuff. So, all right, so let's just go ahead and screw this on here. Okay, we have the joystick all screwed down to the control panel, and you can see it looks pretty sharp there with our brand new screw heads painted. And so let's go ahead now and hook up our wiring. Now remember, again, we made our diagram here, so there's no question about which goes where. So so we're gonna go like this. I've got my diagram. This is front, the hinge is back here. And so we're just gonna start here in the bottom. We're gonna have brown and black. And so here's brown, and it doesn't matter which wire goes on which tab, as long as you get one brown and one black here on this particular one. Where is the black? Here we go. And you really do want to be careful when you put these on, because you can easily break the tabs on these leaf switches. Alright, so this is yellow. Okay, then over here is green and black. And you can see, making this diagram, it took me a minute to do. I think making a little diagram is even better than taking a photograph, because it kind of makes you think about it too when you're looking at it. Alright, and then orange. Otherwise, you take a photo and maybe you didn't realize you missed part of it, or the photo's just not good enough. And if you write it down, you know for sure you're getting all the information that you need. Okay, so there we go. We got everything set up correctly. And you want to make sure that these little tabs don't touch each other, so I'm spreading them out a little bit, because if they touch each other, if they short out right there, then this particular direction on the joystick will be engaged the entire game, and it'll drive you crazy because you're thinking something else is broken, but really it's just they're touching. Okay, so that's all wired up. Looks good. And so the control panel here is pretty much ready to go. Let's just kind of take a quick look here. Nice and clean, our buttons are clean, the joystick doesn't have any rust on it anymore. We've got some nice new carriage bolts here painted, and so we're done. So right now I think what we're going to do is let's address some of the metal parts here. We've got a few brackets, 2 from the control panel, and there's one up, actually 2 up here for the marquee. So I think what I'm going to do now is let me start pulling off these parts, and let's do some painting and sanding. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here and get this bracket off. This is the lower bracket for the Marquis, and it's just four little nuts here, and it should just come right off. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. And everything here seems to be 3/8 inch, which is good. Okay, we have the bracket off, and you could see that this thing is seriously rusted. And so we're going to sand this along with the other brackets, and also I'm going to have to also paint the heads of these carriage bolts because they also are rusty. And I'll just sand these and paint these the same way I did the ones with the control panel. So probably won't show you guys that since it's the same process. Just going to sand it and hit it with some spray paint. So okay, so let's get all set up here, and let's start going to town here on these metal parts. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and sand all these parts. I loaded up some 50 grit sandpaper in my sander here. Pretty aggressive stuff. I just want to get all this big chunky stuff off here. And if it's still kind of rough after using this heavy grit, I'll go in with like a 150 and just kind of clean it up. So, alright, let's get to work. Okay, I am done. I feel pretty good about this. Everything is very smooth. All the rust is gone. So this is going to be really nice for our primer and then our paint. Now on the back side here, where the paint really hadn't rusted, it just didn't want to come off, so I left it. I just made it smooth and made sure I got any chunks off. And this is also a part here that's not going to be seen. So as long as we got the rust off, I'm okay with that. And like this hinge here was actually in pretty good shape compared to the other pieces, and you could still see the original finish, which was kind of like a semi-gloss black here, satin semi-gloss black. So so rather than spending another half hour sanding in here, I didn't feel the need because there's no rust, and the original finish actually held up. And so I just went through with it here and just got any of the loose stuff off, any of the chunks. I made sure it's smooth. And if you could do all of that, if there's no levels or anything, then this paint, the spray paint's going to work great. You'll never know that you did anything to it. You know, you won't see any imperfections across the piece. And same thing here. This one we actually went ahead and got everything off of it. I got a little bit of corner rust here all the way down. I might try one last time getting that out by hand, but if that doesn't work out, I think I might just live with that. It's very minor, it's out of sight, and I would hope that the primer and the paint that we're going to use is going to kind of neutralize that rust, and it won't, maybe not neutralize it, but it'll slow it down, and it won't expand and ruin the piece, which I don't think will happen. But yeah, that actually looks good. So maybe this is all we need to do here is just kind of come into my hand, Just ride the corner here with some sandpaper and get that rust out. You know, there's other ways of doing this. If you had a sandblaster or, you know, I don't. I have just common household tools. You know, I'm not Bob Vila. I haven't invested, you know, $5,000 on the killer air pump and have the, you know, the expensive paint booth with the air compressor and all that. And, you know, we're just kind of doing this cheap and easy. And as long as you're relatively smart about it and have a good game plan, you know, you can get away with not having all that expensive stuff, you know. So, okay, so that is all ready. And so what we're going to do now, I want to clean those up. I want to clean this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Simple Green and spray these down and wipe off all the black dust. So we can go ahead and do that. And then after that, why don't we set up and start painting those. So, all right, I'm going to clean up real quick, and we'll be right back. Alright, so I cleaned up a little bit here, and I just sprayed all these metal parts down with Simple Green, just so we can get off all of the, you know, the sanding gunk that's left over from us sanding, and just get these clean, and you can see all the black that's going to come off here. And we don't want this kind of powdery stuff on the game, on the part, when we get ready to paint it. So, totally necessary step. But you can see, look at that. It's basically just like loose paint dust that's just kind of hanging out there. So let's get all that off. And that way our surface will be completely prepped for painting. It's not a bad idea after you do this to rinse it with water and completely dry it. That way we're getting the Simple Green off. You know, we don't want to leave that chemical on here. I've actually haven't had any real trouble doing it that way. Just, you know, wiping all the Simple Green off and then painting. But if you were paranoid, you could rinse with water and just kind of get that detergent off of here before you apply paint over it. But, it's amazing to me how rusted these parts got. Considering this game's supposed life history, you know, this game was in someone's house for 30 years, or 25, or however long it was. And you wouldn't think you'd see this much rust, but I guess if they kept the game in the garage, and the humidity and the moisture got on these parts, it could oxidize this metal. And also, I'm starting to wonder if this Century company, you know, this company also made Gyrus. Maybe they just didn't do a good job with paint. Because that Gyrus, all of those components were rusted to hell too. And the control panel inside and out. Even though the control panel covered with an overlay, massive amounts of rust underneath it. So, starting to wonder if maybe Century wasn't exactly the best cabinet builder out there. You know, it's funny though, if you think about it, the 80s, these companies came and went in like a flash. You know, this company Century, I have no idea if they're around anymore. And the thing is, Century didn't even make the games. These games were made by Konami. Century was a company in the US that set up shop and said, hey, we can build cabinets, we can create artwork, you give us the electronics, we'll put it together in the US, you don't have to ship, you know, giant games from Japan, and you just give us the PCBs, and then we'll go out there and get all the parts and do all the artwork and build a small little factory, and we'll manufacture these games around your printed circuit board. And so, you know, they didn't really have any creative talent. So when the talent pool dries up, the games, I guess you just kind of go away, don't you? Alright, we are all clean. So, Let's wipe this down again. You know, this is like, I don't know if I'm doing this more because of the camera, but I have become a little bit obsessed with keeping the work area clean as we go. Because I can't stand it. And I'm wasting tons of paper towels, but I don't care. This is clean. All right, so we're ready to paint. We're ready to paint these pieces right here. And we've done this before in other videos, so it's nothing earth-shattering, but it is something that I need to do right now. So what I'm gonna do is let me get my paint supplies together, and we're just gonna put these on the ground and hit them with some spray paint. Okay, we have our metal parts here on some cardboard on the floor of the garage. And just real quick, I'll show you guys what I'm gonna do on this. And I'm doing it a little bit differently than the last video, like on the Gyrus Restore. I'm still not convinced that I have found what I feel is the best paint for metal parts like this, because most of the games didn't have a super high gloss finish. It was kind of a satin or semi-gloss finish. And in previous videos, I was using a satin finish black. And this time around, I'm going to use semi-gloss. And I've been using the semi-gloss for the nuts and the carriage bolts here. And I think that finish actually closely resembles kind of what was on here. It's not like a super shiny gloss, but it's got a little bit of a gloss on it. So here's what we're going to do. First time around, we're going to use Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch Primer. You can't see the can sprayed on, but this is Ultra Cover 2x cover, and this is black primer. I will probably put 2 light coats on both sides of these metal parts using this. And then after that, I'm going to hit it with this Rust-Oleum Painter's Choice Ultra Cover 2x semi-gloss black, okay? And we're going to use semi-gloss black. You can get these paints at Home Depot, Ace Hardware. I got these at Ace Hardware. They're $5.49 a can. This can is more than enough to do these 4 parts, and I'll have some left over. So, all right, why don't we just get going here, and let's start hitting this stuff with the primer. And you want to spray, you know, get about, a good 6 inches above the part. And just kind of get in there. And just kind of let the aerosol can do its work. And you don't want to put it on super heavy. Nice long strokes that are longer than the part. And you know, these ones we strip down to the metal, so they're going to be a little more resistant to the first coat here. Let's try from the other side here. But the primer is really, you really should put primer on, especially if you have bare metal like we do. You can get away with just a spray paint if you're painting over old paint, but I really, truly believe that if you have bare metal, you got to put primer on first. It's just going to make the whole process easier and make the paint stick better. Because the paint wants to stick to something like a primer. The paint doesn't want to stick to bare metal. The primer, on the other hand, is fine sticking with to bare metal. So, okay, we're going to let that dry. And then after that dries, I'll flip it over, give it another coat with the primer, and let that dry, and I'll flip it over and then start using the paint on it. So I actually might end up doing just one coat of primer on both sides simply because I'm running out of it. I don't feel like going to the store, and I think I have enough in here to do one other side. Okay, so since it's raining out and it's hot, I would like to do one more thing today in this video, and I'd like to do it in the house. Yes. We're going to work on the PCB. And I want to install the High Score Free Play mod to this game PCB, and which requires a new EEPROM. We're going to have to burn an EEPROM, and it's also going to require us to install a battery-backed SRAM chip or NVRAM chip. And so we are going to do that right now. So the first thing I need to do is I need to yank the PCB out of here. And, so that one, it's actually missing the side door there. So what we're going to do is come down in here, and we'll kind of show you how to get the PCB out of this game. The PCB really is designed to slide out, but we need to remove this kind of border that's blocking it. It's just a couple screws, it looks like. Okay, so on this particular one, this right here is like an RF cage. They started getting forced to have these kind of things around the boards, I think, pretty early on in the whole arcade scene. I think that they thought that these boards were causing all kinds of frequency issues, emergency radios or TVs or radios or weather, you know, who knows. They were really paranoid with all of these printed circuit boards coming from other countries. You know, who knows what they're transmitting and what band they're going to take over. So we pretty much had to start putting them in these metal cages to cut down on the amount of radio waves that we're getting in and out. Who knows? Maybe they thought the Japanese were eavesdropping with these devices. I don't know, but so we got to get this game out, and it's currently slid into this cage. And it looks like I've got a couple screws here to deal with to get this end off. I actually suspect this is not going to be easy to do. Nope, because I cannot see the screw. Now my Gyrus originally had a setup like this, but I couldn't use it because I had a Gyrus bootleg PCB that would not fit into this metal cage. So right now in the basement, the Gyrus PCB is just leaning on the side of the cabinet, and I'm okay with that. That's just until I can get out there and get a legit one. Alright, so looks like we can get the PCB out this way. And where did that screw go? There it is. Alright, so we got one off. And then the other screw. So if we can get this other screw off down here, and this little end cap secure thing, and we gotta be careful what we're pulling out here. Alright, I got this stupid RF shield off, and I can't tell you I'm going to be putting this back on because it was really annoying. You had like one screw up here, no big deal, then you had one screw that's completely buried underneath, and it was just in a weird spot like up in here and stuff, and honestly this is a completely unnecessary part, so I don't know. Maybe we'll put it back in. This is the kind of stuff that I would like end up, I'll save it, you know, and I'll have a pile of them, you know, 10 years from now, because it's just doesn't do anything and it just slows you down. So, okay, so here's the PCB. We need to disconnect it from the game. I don't think I'm too worried about this. There's a few connections here. We've got the edge connector, and this ground wire here was going to the filter cage. Now this has already come undone when I was screwing around with it, so I'm assuming that's the right way it goes on, because this would be, you never know though. You can't really trust this. So we're gonna have to, when we put this PCB back in, I'm gonna be doing my homework before I plug this in, because we've got power and ground all on this side over here, on the top here. So I'm assuming this is all power and ground up there. So yeah, it's just one simple edge connector that you unplug. Pay attention to the orientation, and then this should just, with any luck, pull right out. And when we pull it out, we just want to make sure we're not taking any wires with it or anything, and because we're going to bring this downstairs and we're going to do some work on it. Okay, so there it is. That is the brains of the game. That is that's Time Pilot, and you can see it's a Konami branded board, unlike my bootleg, which is not. So, but you know, the boards look very similar, the bootleg and the real ones, but this is the real deal. So, and it's a Konami there. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding a ROM here to this blank spot, and then replacing one of the RAM chips with a DRAM. And I'm not sure if that RAM chip is socketed or not. So why don't we go inside in the basement and let's look at the instructions for this, and let's get to work adding free play. Well, it's already got free play, but we're adding high score save functionality to Time Pilot. Okay, here we are. This is kind of my music / ROM burning / soldering section of the basement. Most of the time I'm over here, I'm actually recording my podcast, Video Game Outsiders. I do it right here at this desk, and also working on music for my band, The Killscreens, which is thekillscreens.com. We actually recorded the entire 90% of the CD was recorded down here, right here, in this little space. And if you listen to that CD, it sounds like a bitchin' studio. Well, because this is a bitchin' studio. But anyway, alright, so let's get to work here on getting what we need to do to make Time Pilot save scores. So I want to point your browser, let me turn off the light here. I want to point your browser to scoresaves.com. And this is a website my buddy Matt Osborne made, and he's the one that makes all of these mods. Okay, so it's scoresaves.com, and here you go. And he's got high score save kits for Time Pilot and Gyruss and Time Pilot 84. We can scroll through the list: Arkanoid, Revenge of Doc or Doe, whatever it is, Burger Time, Juno First, Verse Super Mario, Assault Plus, Crazy Kong, and Russian Attack. And he's currently working on a Crazy Climber high score save. And his mods are great. I've got his Burger Time one in my Burger Time. I have Super Mario in my Super Mario, and I will soon have the Gyruss one in my Gyruss once I actually get the right board. But for now, let's click on Time Pilot. And Matt's got some instructions and overview about in history and all this and how it works. And you know, this is a high score save for Time Pilot and Gyruss. Time Pilot was one of my favorites growing up, and Gyruss is just a fantastic game. So they were the obvious choices for me to start the Konami high score save project. So why are these two games together? Simply because the similarities in hardware allow me to combine the high score saves for them. That's right, one ROM works in both games. Okay. So, so we're just going to grab one single file here and just burn one ROM. So it says here, installation Time Pilot. The new high score save ROM, which is a 2764, which is a ROM I have plenty of because of the Nintendo Versus stuff. And it's just going to go in that empty socket that's on the board right there. And then you leave the existing program ROMs in their spot. And then we need to add a static RAM, or actually remove a static RAM at 9F and replace it with NVRAM, a non-volatile memory RAM. So, okay, well, I tell you what, why don't I just download the file and let's just get going on this. It says, and by the way, Matt does have kits for this on his website. He'll sell it to you for $25 plus $4 shipping. You'll get the burnt ROM. You'll get a battery-backed NVRAM, a socket, and I believe he's no longer including the capacitor because I think it was overkill and not necessary. So really, the only 3 components you need are a burnt ROM, a battery-backed RAM or NVRAM, and then a socket to hold the new RAM because the old one was not socketed. Okay, so let's go down here to the do-it-yourself section. You can just download this image and burn it. Okay, well, we're going to do that, Matt. And next time I see you, Matt, I will buy you a beer, okay? Because I'm sure I will see you soon. I did not donate, but I want everybody else to donate because, Matt, this is a great little service that Matt has doing here. All right, so there's our high score kit. So now I need to get it from this Mac computer over to my XP. So why don't I get that all set up and let me get this file over to the right computer and we'll go from there. Okay, before we move on to the other computer and burning the ROM, let's just quickly talk about the tools you're going to need to do this mod. You're going to need a soldering iron. If the original RAM, the static RAM, is soldered to the board, which it most likely is, you're going to need a soldering iron to desolder the old one and to also put a socket and a new one back in its place. So I have my Weller WTC PT. This is the one that I swear by. It's a temperature control unit. You can get really nice fine tips if you so desire. It has no knobs. It has no adjustments. It's the one that my dad used to use, and it's the one that I use, and it has never let me down for the type of work that I do. And I'm not doing super hardcore stuff here. I'm just, replacing capacitors, replacing sockets, soldering wires, replacing some chips here and there. For the most part, I'm dealing with capacitors and wiring and stuff. So this one is absolutely great, and it's worked well too. I've had to replace ICs. It does a great job. You should have some solder. I buy the 6040 super solder, they call it, and it's like 60% lead and 40% tin, I guess. I don't know. And then some flux. And then for this particular job, we're gonna need some battery-backed RAM, and we have some right here. One of the most ubiquitous ones you can find is the Dallas 1220, which is this right here. And this is Dallas 1220 AD. If you can see that, it's kind of out of focus. But this RAM is kind of new old stock that you're buying, okay? And you need to be aware of that because they're not making this stuff anymore, and it's kind of hit or miss with this. And I've gotten pretty lucky buying this off of eBay because if these date codes are right, this is from 1992. Okay, now I don't think the battery that's in here doesn't start really counting its clock down till you power it up for the first time. But this is an old part, and it might only last you a couple of years before you're looking for a new replacement. Another kind are these right here. If you can see that, this is ST brand, and it's M48712. This is a zero power RAM, contains lithium cell. So you can see all of these have batteries inside of them. This one looks like it's from 1999, so it's a little bit newer. But I don't have any other really great solution for you if you can't find a good batch of these. You can find these on Mouser, some of the big electronic sites, and that's where I've been ordering them, and also on eBay. But I'm telling you, I've had some pretty good luck with them. I've had a few where it seemed like it wasn't working because of those, and I replaced it with a newer one or a different one, and bam, it works. And like my tapper over there, I threw one of these in it a couple years ago, has never given me grief, has never lost scores. I've got one of these in my pole position, and occasionally it loses scores. I don't think it's because of that, though. I think it's because of the game and some kind of voltage reset stuff or something. But yeah, these can come in handy. And then also we're going to need a socket. because the RAM that we're going to pull off, that this is going to replace, is going to have a socket. So we're going to make our own socket with these little strips. This is all I had on hand. And you can buy a pre-formed socket that has both sides. This is the kind where you kind of snip off what you need and you kind of make two sides, and you'll see once we get into it. So just a quick and easy way of doing it. I asked my friend Adam actually if I could borrow a socket, and he didn't have one either, so he came up with this solution here for me, and I think it'll work just fine. And then you're also going to need a 2764 ROM, EEPROM, and you need to make sure it's erased. You can do that with the EEPROM eraser, and then we're going to need to burn the data to it. And then it's also helpful to have a label maker on hand, just to kind of document what you did. So we're also going to be doing that. So, all right, let me set up the tripod, and first thing I want to do is, why don't we just get into Windows DOS, and let's burn that ROM real quick and get that out of the way, because that's the easy part. Okay, we got everything all set up here. Actually, before we go any further, I want to actually just take a moment here and kind of explain exactly what it is we're doing and why we are doing it, okay? So, we have two types of things on here. We have EEPROMs or ROMs, and we have RAM, okay? And ROMs are kind of like... think of them like DVDs, okay? It's basically the software, the program is recorded on these one time and not erased, okay? And the game board reads the data from here, and basically all the programming, the graphics, the sprites, all that information is stored onto these EEPROM devices, okay? And this is essentially the code of the game. Really no different than, you know, going to buy an Xbox game and getting the DVD, okay? Now, there's more involved there with the hard drive and all that crap, but the essentialness of it is that this is essentially the program, okay? And because these do not hold a lot of data, they would have many of these, so they would take the code up and they split it up into a gazillion pieces, okay? And this code basically was the instructions for the game. And then on the board are RAM chips, okay? You know, random access memory, and these RAM chips are basically designed to be kind of like little temporary storage buckets, okay? So while the game is doing its thing, it is storing data to RAM, and the data is constantly changing and being updated, and the board has complete control over that. But typically, when you turn the game off, when the game loses its power, all that data that has been written to those RAM chips goes away. It just disappears because there's no power that's powering that chip anymore, and so the data just fades into the space, you know, wherever it goes, right? And so that's where this comes in. This is a battery-backed RAM, okay? So if you can figure out which RAM chip on the board is saving or storing the high scores, and if you can replace it with a battery-backed version, then in theory, that's all you'd need to do is just replace that chip, put a battery-backed version, a compatible battery-backed version with a static RAM chip, and then when you turn the game on, this RAM will have power because it has a battery in it, and it will not lose its data. And on a lot of games, you can actually do just that. You can figure out which RAM chip is saving the high scores, pop it off, plug one of these bad boys in, and bam, the game saves high scores. Like on pole position, that's all I had to do. I had to just take the board out, pull out the correct RAM chip, and plug in one of these, and bam, the game saves high scores. On MCR games like Tron and Tapper, for the most part, that's all you need to do. You could almost always do that. Sometimes you have to do another mod because there's some voltage issue, high, low, where it can reset the scores, but for the most part, you can do just that. On this game board, you can almost do just that. It's my understanding is that when you turn this game on, it has kind of a boot sequence, okay, and which is programmed into the EEPROMs. And one of the very first things this game board does is it clears the high score table, okay? So if for whatever reason data had just somehow stayed on that static RAM chip even after it lost power, Well, the game program is designed in such a way so that it erases that chip so you do not get corrupted high score tables, okay? Maybe you just have one little byte or something that just is hanging out there for whatever reason. It could screw up the whole high score table. So they have it programmed to wipe out that chip as soon as you turn the game on, which is a problem because that means you can't install one of these battery-backed RAMs because every time the game is turned on, poof, it wipes out the data, okay? And that's where Matt Osborne comes in. So Matt figured out a way to mod the board to add an EEPROM right here that is basically giving this board a new instruction and telling it not to erase the high scores on boot up. Just leave them be, okay? And so with that chip plus the battery-backed RAM, that's how this is gonna save scores. So Matt's chip is saying, hey, don't delete them. I know you were doing that before, not anymore. New instruction, don't delete the high scores from the RAM. And then we're gonna have a battery-backed RAM, which is gonna keep them in memory for as long as the battery in this thing lasts, okay? So let's talk about our equipment real quick. We are going to be burning our EEPROM with an EMP10. Okay, this is kind of an old school EEPROM burner. This company is long out of business. This thing's probably from the 90s or late 80s. And so we're going to be basically taking our EEPROM and putting it in here and writing to it using this piece of hardware. Now, if you remember before, I said that you can't erase the data on these. They're really meant to be written to one time. However, you can write to them again, except it's not just a function of sending new data to it. You actually have to erase the data through this window with a UV light, and that's what my EEPROM eraser is right here. And this is nothing more than a box with a light in it. And so to erase the EEPROMs, all you would do here is you take your EEPROMs with the window side up, you stick them in this little box, right? Set the timer to about 10 or 15 minutes on here, and you can see how it's lit up. And so now those are being exposed to UV light, and after about 15 minutes, they will be erased. So that's kind of how it all works. And again, this thing's really old. I have to do this in DOS. This is serial connection. I have my old Athlon 800 down here. I keep it around specifically for jobs like this. You know what? It's kind of cool. I feel nerdy coming into DOS here and doing this. So why don't we go ahead and boot the software, and I'll show you guys what it's going to take then to burn Matt's code to this new custom EEPROM. So we have an A prompt, and we need to get to the G drive, which is where I have all my software. So we just type in G:, and we're going to go into the directory. So CD change directory EMP. And now we're in the EMP directory. Remember, this is an EMP brand device. And we're going to run the software, which is called EMP10. And that's it. So there you go. We have booted into the EMP10 software. You can see here Needham's Electronics. They've long been out of business. And this is version 4.18. We're going to press a key. It's going to go through its test to make sure that the device is actually plugged in and it can find it, and it did. Okay, so now the very first thing we want to do is we want to tell the software what type of device we have, okay? And here's our device. It is an EEPROM, and we need a 2764, okay? And so this is a Fujitsu. And so when it says device, again, it's talking about this right here. So we're gonna go ahead and select device, and we're gonna find the Fujitsu brand, okay? And this exact model number is 2764, so very easy. So we'll just select that. Okay, so now it's initializing the device specifically for my type of EEPROM. I know it changes some of the voltage settings and just how fast it writes. Every chip's a little different. The more modern chips will write much quicker. If you don't really know what chip you have, you're going to use more conservative generic settings, which are going to take longer but are safer. So, okay, so now we want to take our EEPROM here and we want to stick it into our little EEPROM writer. And it's very simple here. If you actually look at this, it shows which way it goes in. You want the notch face up, okay? And with the notch up, you want the bottom legs all the way to the end of this right here, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and put my chip in here with the notch face up. Okay, and I'm going to pull down the lever to lock it in. Okay, so now we are ready. Now the first thing we need to figure out though is that an empty EEPROM? Because I honestly don't know. So we're gonna go up here to verify device is erased, and it is. Okay, so that was one I erased earlier. If it was not erased, it would say so. It'd say, you know, verify erase failed, and then we'd have to put the EEPROM into our UV eraser and erase it and then start over. So luckily it's already erased and we're ready to go. Okay, so we hit escape here. So now we need our file. We need to get Matt Osborne's file onto the computer and from the computer to the EEPROM over there. So the most obvious thing to do here when I first got this, I'm like, oh yeah, load file from disk. No, it says a file name must be specified using V. Okay, well let's do that. Let's press V. Okay, so we press V, and now we have this kind of like file browser here. And again, this is DOS, so I'm going to go G: to get into the G drive. And we're in the EMP drive, so we're over here now, so we're going to hit enter and go up a directory. So now we're in the root of the G drive. And I'm going to scroll down to my ROM folder, which is this one, 1_ROMs. And by the way, I thought I was being clever naming it that so that it would always be on the top. It never is. It's always like in the bottom. I don't get it. I don't know if it's sort by date or something, but all right, so here's all my EEPROMs. I've got a folder full of Versus ROMs, you know, Wrecking Crew, Balloon Fight, Baseball, Mahjong, Gumshoe, Gradius. So if I ever want to, you know, restore or make new games, I have all those here. That's not what we want today, though. And I've got other ROMs, you know, Domino Man, Punch Out Free Play, I think it is. Donkey Kong, Tron Free Play, Tapper, I think that was a Tapper High Score with Free Play. I don't remember what the Tapper one was. Outrun, Kicks, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, let's get back in there. I lost my directory. I'm moving too fast. So we want to go to this folder right here, which is Matt Osborne's folder, and that's where we have the Time Pilot Gyruss High Score. We're going to select the BIN file, okay? The other one's a text file. That's just a README file. We do not want to write that to the chip, but that file was included in the folder from Matt. But we're going to select this one right here, the binary file, okay? And now it says right there that it is queued up, okay? However, that file has not been loaded into memory yet, okay? We basically have like taken the bullet and placed it on the desk, and we said this is the bullet we want, but it's not in the gun yet, okay? So to get the bullet into the gun, we go over here and we go to load a file from disk or remove bullet from desk. so there you go. It says okay, hit control. All right, it has now loaded that file into the buffer and is now ready to be written, okay? And if you're really anal, you can do it twice just to make sure. Okay, so now we have loaded up our gun and we're ready to fire it. And we're gonna go up here to number 1, which is program with selected algorithm. And if we hit enter, it's gonna start writing after we hit it one more time. And there we go. It is now going to be writing the data to the EEPROM. And you can see it's going relatively fast. Sometimes it goes slow, sometimes it goes fast. It all depends on the type of chip, the manufacturer, and the settings. Some of them go very, very slow. Some of them will write in like a second. This is kind of a medium one. I don't think this is going to take that long. So we have to kind of sit here. But I love this stuff. Isn't this like so nerdy? It's so hardcore. Okay, there we go. We have... It says device successfully programmed. Press any key to continue. So there you go. We have successfully written Matt's high score mod to our EEPROM. So now we're going to go on here and just to be sure, we're going to say verify the device equals the buffer. And if you remember when we loaded the file, we were loading it into the buffer. So our file is still in the buffer. And let's just verify it. Okay, now we've double verified, and let's triple verify. So we know that we have successfully written that data to that EEPROM. Okay, so now we're ready to remove our EEPROM from there. And then my next step here is I want to label it. And because I want to remember what I did and what that is. So I'm going to press clear. and I'm gonna say I'm gonna do HSV for high score save, or HSS, and we're gonna print that on my little label maker right here, which I love. And we're just going to stick that on the EEPROM. If you look here, this was formerly a baseball. This was a Nintendo versus baseball EEPROM. Yes, I recycle these all the time. You'll end up with just extra sets of stuff, and I had a bunch of baseball EEPROMs laying around, and really, for me to erase it, it's not a huge deal because I can always just burn it again. So, I'm going to go ahead and put my label over here, and also putting the label on is also doing another thing, is it's covering the window, okay? So now we can't get any UV light in there accidentally to erase our data. Okay, so now the next step here is to install this EEPROM into the board, okay? And now remember, there's polarity, okay, to these, and you always want to look for the notch. The notch is right there on the top, and we can look at the other chips around it, and the notches are all on the top. So I'm going to deduce and say it's very safe to assume that the notch goes on the top here. And we just got to line up all of our pins on here, and you don't want to bend any. And then you want to just push evenly all around when you're putting this down, okay? Okay, and then after it's down, what I like to do is pick up the board and just kind of inspect it from every angle, make sure there isn't a leg hanging out or something, because believe it or not, it's actually kind of easy to mess that up. Okay, so that looks like that is in there well. All right, so that is part one. Now we need to install the RAM, okay, and the RAM is underneath this board right here. So I'm going to be unscrewing this. Of course, all my tools are in the garage, so I'm using this hokey screwdriver. But we need to get underneath this board. God damn, that's on there tight. I think I'm going to have to get a socket, actually. Okay, let me go get my socket set. I'll be right back. Okay, so to get to the RAM chip that we need to replace with the socketed NVRAM, we're going to have to take this board apart here. And we just have a couple of little nuts here that we need to break loose, so just going to use my little socket set here and see if we can find the right size. There we go. And we're just going to go ahead and break these loose. And you can see there is a plastic washer that is on the bottom of this little stack here. So it goes nut, metal washer, plastic washer, and the plastic washer is what is touching the board. So when we put it back together, we're gonna make sure we do that same exact thing. Okay, so we've got those parts off right there. And now we should be able to open up our stack like so. Okay, so the RAM chip that we need to get to is at 9H, I believe, which is, let me double check Matt's website, 9F, sorry. So the chip we need to get to is at 9F, and you can see on the board here there's actually coordinates. So the 9 is right here, and the F is over here, and where they meet is the chip that we need to remove, so we go 9F, and they come together right here. So that's the guy that we need to replace. And I'm just double checking that on Matt Osborne's site, scoresaves.com, and yes, that is the right one. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the rest of this stuff over here, just so that we can have some kind of freedom of movement. Okay, so we've disconnected the ribbon cable here, and there's also a little, looks like a power lead right here that we disconnected. Okay, so we need to get this guy off and put our socket on. And to remove this chip, what you want to do is you want to cut it off first. And this is by far the easiest way to replace chips like this, ICs that are soldered directly, you know, RAM chips, ICs that are soldered directly to the board. Just cut them off, and then when you replace them, put a socket on. And the socket's not necessary because we could solder our new RAM chip directly to the board, but it's going to make it easy for us later if we need to change the RAM chip because it's just socketed. So let me kind of zoom in here and so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to go ahead here and I'm going to cut this guy off. I'm going to double check again, 9F. And I'm just going to get in here and I'm just going to start cutting to those leads. And I want to do this in a way where I don't, you know, harm the board. And I'm just cutting those legs off, you can see there. And you want to have some good side cutters when you do this. And you want to make sure that you're not cutting traces. So you just kind of want to take your time and just cut all these legs off. And this is just a much easier way of getting chips off that are soldered directly to the board. Okay, so we have removed our old static RAM. So now what we need to do is get in here with the soldering iron and remove these old leads on here. And we might suck them up with our solder sucker, or also get some needle nose pliers or tweezers if you have them. I don't have any tweezers actually down here. I don't think my wife would like it if I took them out of her cabinet. So we're going to try to just heat this up and get all of these out here. So let's go over here to our soldering iron. And that's where we're going to be working right there. Okay, so I probably should throw some flux on here, and it's going to make our life a little bit easier. So I'm using just some basic Radio Shack rosin soldering flux, and you can apply this with a brush. I don't have a brush. I always use this screwdriver, and we're just going to kind of put it all over this. Just going to kind of help us get everything off. And the ones that are sticking up on this side, I'm going to try to pull from this side of the board. And then the other ones are probably going to go from underneath. But basically what we want to do here is, I think I'm going to add some solder to all of these. And this is just going to kind of aid in our solder sucking and on pulling and all that. So I'm going to go through here and just kind of throw some solder on all of these connections. On each one of these little pads here. Alright, so we're going to take the solder sucker here, and let's just see what happens on these ones over here. We can pull the leg out with this sucker. Yep. Because there's just like a little piece that's in there, because I cut them kind of flush. And you can see those holes are coming nice and clean. And we're going to probably have to go back and clean out a couple of them a little bit further. All right, so I've got a couple hanger-oners here, so I'm going to kind of hold this board up to the light real quick and see. Actually, no, it's pretty clear. So let's look at it from this side. So all of these legs are still in here. This side's clear, this side's not, right here. So what I'm going to do is just throw some solder on this side real quick and see if I can suck those legs up. Because they're so small, the solder sucker actually does a pretty good job of grabbing them out. The one thing I could have done was just left them a lot longer on the top side. But I actually had a hard time getting in there. And they're actually falling off as I touch them with the soldering iron. Here's one that's kind of stuck on here. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go through here really quick and suck, suck, suck. Okay, we have removed all the pins. It was a little bit more work than I was anticipating. I cut them too flush, so I would try to cut them as high as you can when you're removing the RAM chip. Anyway, and you can see here, if I take a flashlight, we've got nice clear holes all the way across. So we are now ready to insert our little socket, and again, we're using this type of socket, which is it's kind of it comes in a strip and you basically break it off to what you need. They do make one-piece sockets that are specifically designed for this configuration chip, but I didn't have that on hand, so we're just going to use this kind of strip kind, and it's perfectly acceptable. So what we're going to do now is just kind of put this in here and then solder it down, and that's really it. And then we've got our socket installed. Just like so. And let me just kind of zoom back here. I'm going to turn this over, and I just kind of want to tack it down a little bit. I'm just going to take some solder here, and I'm just going to tack this down so it stays in place. Hot. I got my hand on the other side, and I felt that heat. Okay. Ow. Okay, so now we are ready to solder the whole thing down, and let me just kind of zoom in on where we're going to be working, which is right there. Right? Yep, right there. So I'm just going to go ahead now and solder this in. And these little pins are so small, it's not going to take much to solder this in. And remember, I'm heating up the part, and then I'm applying solder to it. You're not really heating up the solder. And because these are kind of close, you want to be careful that we're not bridging solder across two pins, which would create a short. Okay, we've got our one half done. Let's do the other half. And because these solder pads are so small, it doesn't take much solder or heat at all. Just holding it onto the pin and the pad for a second, and then I'm adding my solder. And after I add the solder, I'm kind of going up along the leg, which kind of gives you that nice solder cone, which is kind of what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of double check my work here. I want to get in close and just make sure I didn't bridge it, no connectors or anything. But that looks pretty good there. If you guys can see my work, and if we look at it from the other side, we've got like a nice socket here. I'm gonna wipe some of this. I'm gonna get a rag and wipe off the excess flux because we don't want that to leave that on the board. So I'm gonna go get a towel. I'm gonna just kind of wipe up the flux off of here. So I'll be right back. Okay, one thing I want to just kind of point out here. When I soldered it, it looked like I left a little mark on the board, which had me a little worried. I don't know if you guys can see this right here. I don't think I lifted a trace, but it just had me a little concerned. So I took my multimeter and I put it on continuity. And what that means is that if we have a connection between 2 points, this thing's going to make a beeping noise. And so I went to the suspect trace, which is this one, which goes all the way to over here. Actually goes here. And you can see I'm getting a beeping sound. So that trace is fine. I'm going to do the one next to it, which goes over here. And so that's okay. I did not lift the trace. It looks like I just left a little mark. It probably just kind of marked up this here with the heat. But I just wanted to double check that before I plugged it in the game, because that would suck if there was a problem. And if I could find it now, let's find it. But we didn't find a problem, so it's okay. And everything else here looks really good. You know what? That one right there looks a little bit light on solder. It almost looks like I didn't solder it. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hit that one right there with a little bit of solder. And I'm just double checking my work, because I don't want to put this all together and it not work. And if I can solve the problem and fix the problem now before I get in the garage and before we plug this game in, let's do it here. So I'm just kind of studying this, and I think it all looks really good. So let's turn this over now, and we are ready to install our RAM chip. Okay, and so we're gonna, which RAM chip should I use here? It's kind of Russian roulette for me, because these are all new old stock, and for the most part they usually work. So I'm gonna take, I think, let's take a Dallas one, and or should I take an ST? Let's try a Dallas, okay? And on these chips here, they don't actually have a notch. There's a little dot right here which represents pin 1. So that tells me then that, and the notch on these is on this side, so we're going to put it in with the notch facing the same way, just like so. And so let's go ahead and put this into our socket right here, and we are about ready to test this out. Are you guys getting excited? And the nice thing here about the socket, though, is that if for whatever reason this particular RAM is bad, it's going to be very simple for me to try another one. So let's get it in there. Okay, it is in, just like so. And I'm just going to kind of double check my work to make sure there's no legs hanging out, and there isn't. So it's time to put the board back together. And why don't we go over here, and we're just going to kind of reverse the process that we did when we put it together. When we took it apart, I mean. And is this fun? Do you guys like this stuff? It is fun. Sometimes I feel like a little worker bee here, just going. Okay, so let's get all of our little standoffs, which are these little plastic tubes like here, and we got to put this thing back together, and I feel like I'm missing one of them. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly look here and make sure there's no loose pieces of metal that we cut off or anything. I'm going to probably shake the board and just make sure there's no short. Now, we didn't create a short when we removed all those legs because, you know, we're cutting the legs off, we're desoldering them, and we don't want them to bridge a couple traces or anything here. And, of course, you should be careful of static electricity. You know, honestly, I've never really had trouble with that, not that I know of, knock on wood, but you should be wearing a static electricity discharge bracelet and all that stuff, but I guess I'm a bad teacher because I'm not wearing one, so sue me. But, you know, this is pretty simple stuff. It's not, you know, AMD, microprocessors and stuff, so I think this stuff's pretty robust. Okay, so we are done. We're ready to plug it in. Actually, there's one thing that I want to do while we got the board out. Let's set up these dip switch settings, okay? And dip switches, what do you mean by that? Well, you know what? These game boards all have options, okay? You might have difficulty options and free play options and quarter options. There might be an option to set it for a cocktail table or an upright. You know, like a cocktail table, you want the screen to flip around, right? Because you usually have two players head to head, both have a different vantage point of the monitor, and usually that's in a dip switch setting. The difficulty level, like I said, and the, you know, 1 quarter gives you 2 credits, or you need 2 quarters for 1 credit. You could turn the track sound off usually, you know, when the game's just sitting idle in there in the arcade and it's making all its sounds, you know, there's usually an option to turn that off, and some games have like lots of different options for the attract. So what I want to do right now is I want to pull up the Time Pilot manual online, and let's take a look at the dip switch settings. And also, I want to go to twingalaxies.com because I like to set up all of my games to the Twin Galaxy settings, because that way, you know I'm playing with the arcade, you know, tournament rules and all that stuff. So let me go over here and let's go to the computer. Okay, here we are at the twingalaxies.com website. And Twin Galaxies, for you who don't know, this website's been around forever. These are the official scorekeepers of classic arcade games. There's also Aurcade, which is AURCADE, but really, Twin Galaxies is kind of the gold standard. So we search for Time Pilot. We're going to select Arcade here, and we're going to say Points Marathon, which is usually the standard settings. Okay. So it says here that the above dip switches are not only the factory default settings, but they're also the correct Twin Galaxies tournament settings. Okay, so basically we're going to use the default Twin Galaxy settings, and it says for dip switch number 1, 1 through 8 is off, okay? So if we come here and we look at our board, and dip switch number 1 is right here, and 1 through 8, where's my finger, is off, okay? And then it says for dip switch number 2, 1 and 2 are off, okay, they're already off. Number 3 is on or off, depending if it's upright or a cocktail. Where the hell's my finger? Number 3, it says that number 4 is off, which it is. Number 5 and 6 are on, which I have it already on. Number 7 and 8, it says, are off. Right now, I have 8 on, okay? So I'm going to turn 8 off, okay? Now, okay, so now we know that the difficulty is the correct setting, okay? Now we're going to customize this a little bit for my arcade, though. So now I'm going to go over to the KLOV website, which is klv.com, and up here they have the Time Pilot dip switch settings, because I want to change 2 things that are probably not part of the Twin Galaxy settings, but they don't change the difficulty of the game. It just makes the game more appropriate for my basement, okay? And it says here on KLOV that on dip switch 1, if we have 1 through 8 all on, it's going to put this thing into free play, which is what I want, because I don't want to mess with quarters in my arcade. So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to turn 1 through 8 all on, and then it's going to put this game into free play, and there you go, 1 through 8 is on, okay, and it says on here on, so they're all up, which is on. Okay, so now we just enabled free play on this board. And the other thing I want to do is I want to turn off the attract sound, because honestly, I don't want to hear it. And it says here, dip switch 2, if you look down a little bit, on dip switch 2, it looks like with number 8 is how we turn it on and off. Okay, dip switch 2, number 8 is on and off, and it looks like we just turned it off actually. So that was on before, and for whatever reason, Twin Galaxies had that dip switch as off. So I think we just turned off the sound setting right there with number 8, because number 8 off should be off and on should be on for the attract sound. And I think that's it. And let's just double check here. The type of cabinet, number 3, up is upright, on is upright, and off is cocktail. So we have it set to upright, and then we also have the attract sound off, and we just put it on free play. Okay, we are ready to plug this into the game and test our work, and let's cross our fingers that we didn't screw this up. Let's go to the garage. Okay, we are back in the garage here, and let's plug the board in and see if our work was correct. And we're going to be doing this together, guys, because you know what? We're live without a net here. So let's slide the board in carefully here. We don't want to wreck it now. And there's just like these little channels it has to get into. Come on. All right, here we go. So we're going to slide it down. And it needs to get into this one too. There we go. It's tight. Okay, and I went online and looked, and pin number, these high pins up here, 18, 17, and 16 are ground and 5 volts, which I could tell here are ground and 5 volts. So I know that this is the right direction to put that on, and it's also the natural direction that this harness wants to go. All right, are we ready to do this? I know you guys must be excited. This better work. All right, so let's go over here, and we're going to experience this together, live, with no camera trickery, because if it's broken, we'll be fixing it together too. All right. All right, so I'm going to need to get the joystick, the control panel plugged in. Let's turn the light off. Let me grab the control panel and plug it in. Because we got to put up a high score to make sure the high score save kit's working, right? All right, so let's take this here, and we're going to plug this in. And I guess we're going to also be checking our joystick work as well. I haven't tested this joystick here since, since we took it apart and put it back together. So, okay, let me get the plug here. All right, this is always the moment of truth here. All right, nothing's on fire yet. Game is loading. The monitor's warming up. Oh, God, please work. All right, look at that. It's a success. And it's on free play, okay? Because we did that with the dip switch settings. And the game is completely silent. I don't hear any noises because we turned off the attract sound. So let's go ahead and play a game. All right, and let's get a score on the leaderboard. And our joystick is working. Let me just double check that. Left, right, up, down. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So we need to get 50,000 points to get on the leaderboard. So let's see what we can do. This game's so great. So right now we're fighting the biplanes. Let's rescue this guy. Oh, son of a bitch. But there is still an unknown. We don't really know if that battery-backed Dallas RAM I threw on there is good, because I'm telling you, I've had hit or miss luck with it. By the way, the picture on this monitor is actually pretty great. It's got a free life. Can we get to the high score without dying? Oh, all right, we got 1 life left. I think there's a leaderboard on here too, so as long as we can get our initials in the game and then power the game off, we're gonna let it sit for a few minutes and then power it back on to see if our high score is still there. All right, we just warped. We're warping to the World War II era, I guess. Yep, AD 1940. This game's awesome. And having like this kind of 360-degree joystick really makes it. This Monroe stick is the way to go. Come on, we gotta get over 50,000. Because I want to see my high score on top there when I turn the game back on. We're almost there. Damn it, don't die. All right, we got it. We got the high score. Okay, I'm gonna kill myself. All right, so now that our high score is recorded, 57,700 it says on the top. And we're gonna put our initials in. Okay, now the moment of truth. We are gonna unplug the game, right? We're gonna unplug it, and we're gonna be back in like 5 minutes. So I'm gonna pause this, and I will come back in 5 minutes. And here, look at my swatch. It is, it's about 7:10. So I'll be back at 7:15 to see if the high score has saved. Okay, we are back, and it's been more than 5 minutes. I think it's safe to say that if the battery wasn't working on the RAM chip, that the data is all gone. So right now we're gonna see if our battery-backed RAM install was a success, and if we see our high score on the top, we know that we did it right. And please work, because I don't want to redo this. And voila, it worked. High score still there, 57,700, JON. There you go, guys. That was an absolute success. So we're getting a little bit further into the Time Pilot Restore, and I hope you guys are enjoying this stupid little series. So I think, you know, we might have one video maybe left, because we're pretty much almost done here. So yeah, it's coming along, and I got the metal parts here drying. I've got a coat of paint on them, so it's just a matter of time. I think we'll have this game done in about a week or two, so there you have it. Let's go back down to... By the way, I just noticed this. This is not on. Why is that not on? There we go. Definitely has a little sweet spot there on that ancient light fixture. So, all right, guys, let's go down to the basement and wrap this up. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was part number 3 of the Time Pilot Restore. I think we should have part number 4 up next weekend. I am sorry that this video did not get out on Sunday. I gotta tell you, this was actually a long video and required a lot of extra, not editing, but just bouncing time and recording time. So I'm sorry it's out late, but it's out here on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then we will be back on track next week. And then I'm also gonna start doing the 2 videos a week thing. I really wanna do that. So that's a goal of mine here going forward. Anyway, if you guys have never subscribed to my little channel, now is a great time. Go ahead and click subscribe. I release new videos every week, usually on Sundays, and I'm going to start trying to do that again twice a week. And then also, I have a podcast that I've been doing for about 9 years almost called Video Game Outsiders. We broadcast that podcast live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the All Games Radio Network at allgames.com. So just go there on Tuesdays at 9 Eastern and click the Listen Live button on allgames.com and check out our podcast, Video Game Outsiders, which is videogameoutsiders.com. Okay, guys, that is it for me. And I hope you guys are enjoying these vids. And again, thanks for subscribing. And I will talk to you guys next time. Later.